You're good. Go ahead.
Ready? Yes, welcome everybody to our Board of Governors meeting this afternoon. And thank you for everybody joining. I think we have Brigadier General Mason on Zoom, and I'm on Zoom, and all the rest of the board is in the boardroom. The very first thing I would like to say, if I may, just to echo what the Cabinet said to staff and faculty on the town halls, just to thank all our staff and faculty for all the adjustments and realignments that you made to make this spring semester a successful one for our students. Thank you to our Cabinet for hosting or having town halls with our staff. Thank you to Kathy Kelly and Marissa. And also thank you to the faculty for joining the faculty town hall, and very appreciative of all the information that President Wilson and the rest of the Cabinet provided. And they had some outstanding questions, and I think they really appreciated it. So call the meeting to order. And the very first thing we have on our agenda is a motion to ratify the March 31st board polls for bookstore renovation and the Wilson Hall roof replacement. Do you want to just briefly say what those are, President Wilson?
Sure. And I'll call on my esteemed colleague, Daryl Morris, to talk about those. And then we've got another contract approval right after that.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. The first item was the ratification of the bookstore, and that was a board poll, and already taken care of that. The next item is request for proposal 20-092, which is a storage array replacement. This is technology. It is central infrastructure equipment for our IT department. We reached the end of life on our current storage array facility. And this has been planned for replacement for some time. I know there are always questions spending this type of money when we're in this situation, but it's one of those things that we're faced with. It's either use it, lose it, or go down from a technology standpoint. So we've just got to have the backbone and the structure for this. Be happy to entertain any questions. We're presenting to you, we Converge 1 from Overland Park, Kansas, in the amount of $128,012.53 for this product.
And that includes support for 3 years, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I have no real knowledge of what they do or who they are, but I assume all these were similar bids with respect to the specs and all that.
They were. Allegiant was just a little way over the top.
I could tell
with some of their proposal numbers, but yes, it was basically the same. There was slight difference in two different proposals from Eagle on that, just right, with the numbers behind, but contains all the production, service, networking, and all of that for the campus community.
Okay. Should I go back? I need to have a motion to ratify the bookstore renovation and the Wilson Hall roof replacement.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any questions? All in favor, vote aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Any further questions on the storage array replacement to Daryl before I ask the question? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the RFP 20092 storage array replacement as presented? It's to Converge 1.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any further questions? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. And then back to you, Daryl, on the RFQ 20093 benefit consulting services.
I respectfully request that we pull this item from the board
Okay.
this time. RFQ 20-093 has a typo in an area there on one of the numbers. And additionally, I believe there's additional information that the board needs to consider at a later time before reviewing this. I don't think it's summarized. We sent the format that had been sent, and I looking at this and reviewing it, I think there's more information that the board really needs to be aware of. What I would like to do, if the board's willing, is pull this item off the agenda for this time, bring it back in June.
Okay, that sounds good. So no action on this item.
Thank
President Wilson, would you like to speak to the COVID-19?
Yes, appreciate the opportunity to brief and update the board on COVID-19, where we have come as a university and where we're going. Last board meeting, we had Dr. Davenport provided an update. I wanted to provide some additional updates and details. First and foremost, again, we're most grateful for our faculty and staff for their willingness to work through COVID-19 with us. As we all know, it's led to unprecedented challenges for U.S. colleges and universities. We have several universities across the state as a result of COVID-19 and the fallout that have laid off, furloughed, eliminated thousands of positions collectively, and even several universities that have done over 1,000. Here on our campus, unfortunately, we have had to furlough and lay off folks simply because when we don't have students on campus, we don't have as much work. We hope that things will come back to normal and we'll be able to restore some of those positions. And we know how disruptive that has been to our campus community, and to families and to staff, as well as many staff have been asked to step up. So just want to express appreciation there. I want to talk about first and foremost the fall. Ideally, we are looking at coming back in the fall. Now it's going to look a little bit different, and hopefully be able to enter into a period of what I like to call cautious normal. And so as we enter into a period of cautious normal, all taking individual responsibility for our interactions, our hygiene habits, cleanliness of the surroundings and the like, we're hoping that we will be able to operate and provide our students with an exceptional experience again this coming fall. And so part of the cautious normal is continuing to depopulate our campus to the extent possible. If remote work is something that's a possibility, being able to do that while we serve our students. That's why we're here. Using Zoom for meetings, being as flexible as we can in terms of classes. At this point in time, we have surveys out to our staff and our faculty about their level of comfort, their thoughts, their feelings in terms of where things are. And we want to make sure that we're doing that. Another part of our cautious normal and this world in which we live is, as the applied learning institution, we have always had a push to have hands-on practical learning. And as we have elevated unemployment levels in our society, we have folks that need additional training to get back into the workforce. We are working right now on a new workforce development program that will add close to 200 short courses that will be available for members of our community. So we'll be looking to roll that out on July 1st in correlation with a partner. The classes will be affordable, ranging anywhere from $200 to $700 per course. It will be something that individuals will be able to come, and we anticipate at their own pace, at their own schedule. Somebody wants to complete a course within a day, they'll be able to do that. If they need to take a year, they'll be able to do that as well. But we are in the process of finalizing arrangements for that right now. But I did want to update the board and the community that we are looking to be even more responsive and be an asset and a resource to those that are out of work and those that are looking to skill up, as we might say. With respect to our traditional semester, we are putting together a plan A, plan B, and plan C. Part of our town hall meetings with the faculty and the staff this last week were to talk about the different issues and concerns that are there, talk about some of the preparations that are into play. Again, we're hoping that we can be back, full bore in the fall, having extracurricular activities, at least to some degree. They'll look different, of course, making sure that we've got in-person classes going. And again, making sure that we have physical distancing things that are there. But really, as we talk about the guiding principles for COVID-19, we're prioritizing the health and safety of our students, our faculty, our staff, and our guests, while we're complying with local, state, federal, and health guidance. We're going to make sure that we sustain the teaching, learning, research, and cultural missions of Missouri Western, acting responsible in terms of stewarding the university resources and continuing to provide information to our campus community in a transparent manner while we work purposefully with government, industry, community, and our neighbors. So as we move forward this last May, this week actually is the first week of our summer semester. And so we kicked off classes on Tuesday. We're very encouraged that our enrollment for summer semester as of Tuesday was down about 5.3%. Now, if we back up to last fall, that was about the exact amount that our enrollment was down last fall. And so having come over the last 10 months through COVID-19 and through some of the staffing alignments that we have had to work our way through, the fact that basically we have been able to maintain our enrollment is a tribute to our faculty and our staff and the administrators for all that they have done to make that possible. And then also to our community for continuing to tout Missouri Western, the positivity that is there as well. It's still too early to tell with respect to fall semester enrollment and where we are. We have been hearing anything around the country from universities being down from 10% to 25% to some in the 30% range. I can tell you we track on a week-to-week basis in terms of what our fall semester enrollment looks like. For our returning students, we have seen a considerable improvement over the last 2 weeks. So we were down by about 15% 2 weeks ago. As of Tuesday, our enrollment for fall was down about 7%. And so that's an amazing jump. I'd like to just share my gratitude to everyone who is working, connecting with students, eliminating obstacles and making sure that we're going that way. Our new student enrollment continues to track about 15% down, but from what we're seeing, that's probably pretty consistent with what we're seeing around the state. But we are encouraged with our returning student population and what we're seeing there. From a planning standpoint, we are doing all of our summer classes online. Our student services are being provided virtually. We have our library working full time to make sure that our faculty and students are being assisted. Our buildings, we're practicing social and physical distancing, and so we've limited access to the public and to our students to some of our buildings. We still have about 30 students who are in our residence halls right now. We will be expanding the number of students that are in our residence halls starting on June 8th. On June 8th, pursuant to the NCAA regulations and our local conference and determination by our Vice President of Intercollegiate Athletics, Josh Looney, we are looking to bring student athletes back into our dorms in a wave-like manner. So June 8th, we're looking at about 60 students that will be joining us on campus as they will start to engage in training for the upcoming fall seasons. So we move forward again. The idea is to go back to a cautious normal. And so part of the caution that we are looking at is changing the format of some of our activities that will roll out in the fall, and we will have more information there. But as we look to depopulate, we look at spreading out our classes. innovative scheduling and coordination with our faculty, and really having the interactions be part of personal accountability in all sectors and quadrants. University is like a miniature city in many regards. And so from A to Z and everything in between, we're in the process right now soliciting feedback, planning, working with our partners and going forward. So with that, I wanted to provide that COVID-19 update, and along with some of the things, I'd open it up to any questions that any of the board members might have.
On the new courses for training, would that be taught by our faculty, or is that?
So those courses could be, those workforce development courses, those could be taught by our faculty. There will be opportunities there, but this will be working with a partner and seamless operations. There'll be Missouri Western courses branded that way, but we have a provider that will be able to give us the flexibility that's needed to deliver those really on the spot.
Any other questions?
Yes, Governor Landis does.
My question is, because of COVID-19, we had a lot of people go home that were paying or had paid for room and board here. I have a friend that his son won't get into to another university, and they're making demands to get the money back. Are we being challenged in any way with that?
So our determination with the students, and we made this announcement fairly early, was that we were going to apply a 40% credit to those students. So when they come back in the summer or the fall, that could be applied to their tuition, it could be applied to their housing. For those students who were graduating or for whatever reason they were unable to come back to Missouri Western, that we would work through refunds for the amount that they didn't use. And so to this point, we have had some refund requests, not a lot. One of the things that's been encouraging is to date, we have 613 returning students who desire to live in our residence halls, which is a pretty good clip, particularly when you combine that together with our incoming students. And so I think a number of those 613 are returnees who will have a credit. One of the things is that represents a sizable financial loss to the university, well over $1 million. But as you'll recall, Missouri Western did receive some CARES Act money, 2 phases. One was $1.8 million that we needed to distribute directly to the students. That money has been distributed to our students in correlation with the federal regulations and guidance that they provided. The additional $1.8 million, it's my understanding, is that we have the application in. We're just waiting to receive the funds. Those funds that we'll receive from the federal government will offset the losses that we have taken with respect to housing and meals. So one of the things is we have about 1,200 beds here on campus. And so, in terms of our exposure there, it is less than what you might see at some other universities that have, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 beds.
Okay.
Okay. Great question. Thank you. If there are no more questions or comments for President Wilson on the COVID-19 planning, we'll ask VP Daryl Morrison to come back to the mic and discuss with the board possibilities for tuition and fees for the 2020-21 year.
Thank you, everyone, again. I have a slide presentation this afternoon to talk about tuition and fees and the proposal and kind of what goes into this and give you a little background on it. Am I working? Here we go. So the question oftentimes that boards ask are, how do you formulate tuition and fees for a campus? What goes into that? Well, in the state of Missouri, several things go into it. First of all, in this state, there is a Higher Education Funding Act, Senate Bill 389, that sets a cap on the amount of tuition on the in-state students that can be charged. Secondly, you have to look at operational needs of the campus. And then thirdly, there are contractual obligations on a campus that we have to meet, which requires increases from time to time. So I want to start with the first one, and that is the Higher Education Student Funding Act, the HESFA as it's referred to. It determines the allowable increase to state undergraduate tuition and fees. It's based on the average state universities tuition and fees adjusted by CPI, Consumer Price Index. The allowable increase for 2021 was based upon an average of $7,528.57. Now we are at $7,100, as you can see from the slide there, and the CPI for this year is 2.3%. So we are allowed the full CPI increase of 2.3%, or a total of $173.16 per student annually, full-time student. Okay. There's an additional provision in the HESFA Act that states if state appropriations decrease from 2017 to 2018, from 18 to 19 for our particular year, that we could have potentially received some additional funds, okay? And this is where I created an error and why you got multiple emails concerning tuition fees, is because I thought the law was applying to 19 and 20. So I was trying to factor in and do something with our decreased in funding for the current fiscal year. But after many conversations with the Department of Higher Education, as they say, I came around to their way of thinking on this and had to give up, okay? And so that's where we're at on this, okay? So that's why you have an amended tuition and fee sheet that should be in your book, okay? So concerning HESFA, they only look at certain things in the guidelines. They only look at tuition for an undergraduate student, okay, on campus. They look at your mandatory fees. And it's not all your mandatory fees. If there is a student-backed fee, such as we have here, a Student Success Act fee, it is removed from this. So I presented in your packet, and you'll see this all the way through, there are 3 proposals for your consideration, okay? Do we have a preference as an administration? Of course we do. And our preference is proposal 3. And we'll talk about why. But I want to explain the differences as we go through this. I had $173.16 annually to allocate. Proposal 1 allocates all of that to tuition only, okay? And it keeps all of our mandatory fees at the same level that they currently are. Proposal 2 allocates a portion of it, 1%, to tuition, and then the remaining is allocated throughout to the fees and removes the cap on our fees. Currently, our fees cap at 12 hours. So if you take 15 hours, you pay the same number of fees as a student taking 12 hours, which leaves money on the table in some ways to do that. It's also a disservice for those that take less than a certain number of hours oftentimes. For instance, if you look at the SGA fee, it's got a 12-hour cap, but it's also a 30-hour up to 6 hours. So if you take 6 hours or less, you pay a flat $30. What we would propose is moving to something to a 3.75 per credit hour, which actually is a savings to that student who's a part-time student. and the ones that take more pay more. Any questions on this slide? Okay. So how does that translate? Well, it translates into this. If you look at proposal 1, 6705, okay, 6,600 for proposal 2 for tuition, and proposal 3. And the difference between proposal 3 and proposal 2, and you'll see it on down the line, deals with the rollback of online tuition to the same rate as regular tuition. Okay. Which now those are two different rates. Okay. You see the increase for a student. This is an annualized basis, 30 credit hours. Okay. That's how the calculation has to be done. You'll see max experience will go from 120 to 150. The SGA will go from $100 to 112 on this. And this is annual, $60 increase annually on that one. Change the instructional support, and we're changing the title to technology fee included in that to $50. And then the student support fee there, $180, which is the student back fee. And we're doing away with the yearbook per guidance of the board at our last meeting when we went through much of the academic reorganization. Okay, which brings us to 7,100 currently, and we would move to 72,90 annually for a student taking 15 hours in state. Okay.
Daryl,
Yes.
do any of these need, I forget which ones have to be voted on by the student government?
Yeah, the last one, the student support fee, and both President Wilson and myself have met with SGA, and they are in support of this with student fee. And really, it gives them just slightly a little bit more money because of removing the cap. And that's what their concern was not to lose any of their current funds.
Okay, so it'd be $180
Yes.
for
Student backed.
for a full year.
Yes, for a full year. Yes, $90 a semester.
Okay.
Okay. And I have in the lower left corner the HESFA cap amount for this year, just for reference. Yeah.
So
Okay.
math on that, $2 an hour.
Yeah, roughly.
Right,
That's something
about
like
right.
that. That's right.
And we were, so the other quick math, I've got a question. So if you extrapolate that increase times the number of credit hours we charge for
Mhm.
on an annualized basis, what does that mean in total revenue increase? Just, is there a quick math of that?
Yeah, it's about given current,
Yeah, current, yeah. Without
given
knowing-
current, about 1.2 million.
Okay. I was just
About
curious.
1.2 million. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Daryl, I missed the question. I couldn't hear Dave.
Well, the question was, how much additional revenue would this generate?
Okay.
Yeah. And it's under the same student enrollment. So if we're down 5%, then
That's
you know,
right.
you would, it'd probably end up being a wash.
Right. Thank you.
I would. Okay. Other questions?
How does this 242 number that I just kind of calculated compare with other institutions?
We're still in the lower percentile. Okay. We're not to the mid yet,
Yeah. One of the things
but we're not on the bottom either, Dave.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that I can add is if you look around the state, right, all of the public institutions are dealing with the same legal requirements that Daryl mentioned to start.
Right.
So within that range, you look at what other universities are doing. Many of them who have come out already are hitting the max they're allowed to this year. Because we're starting from a lower base, for instance, the amount of increase on our students is even less from a dollar to dollar standpoint. So if someone, let's say, I think, Northwestern, UMKC, Mizzou, their tuition is several $1,000s more than ours per year. And if they're increasing their tuition by 2.3%, it's going to
Sure.
be more money wise than it is
So,
here
and the only
in
way we get
Missouri Western.
outside of that, of the state statute is can we appeal or something to the court?
Yes,
of board?
yeah, so-
I mean, there is a process.
There's a waiver
right?
process.
Right, there's a waiver,
yes,
that's what.
That's exactly right.
There's a process, and I'll just give you an example to talk through it because it's good for the board to know. So there was one of the state institutions about 3 years ago that the board met, and the university was in financial distress. And the board voted to increase tuition and fees by 15%. And the way that it works here in Missouri is, at least this is my understanding, the board has the authority to increase and set the tuition and the fees at whatever it wants to do. Now, if you're above the legally allowed limit, what happens is that the Department of Higher Education will write a letter to the board saying you have violated the statute. And so we are hereby imposing a fine up to $1 million as a result of not following the statute. At that point in time, the university would appeal to the Department of Higher Education, make its case for why that cap shouldn't apply. And then this Department of Higher Education has the ability to rescind that fine and reduce that fine. So for instance, the university that I'm referring to, my understanding is they did 15%. They received the fine letter. They went ahead and appealed. And what was worked out with the Department of Higher Ed was, okay, we're going to let you increase your tuition and fees by 15%, but it has to be over the course of 2 years. And so that was, and then they rescinded the fine in whole. The university was able to move forward with that. And that was one of their approaches to resolving some of their financial issues.
So that's, I've heard that story, and that's,
Yeah.
I think that's a really sets good foundation for probably my next question. And where I asked where we were at on the chart.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
my question, for us to be in the middle of the pack,
Yeah.
for state universities,
Yeah.
how far would we have to go, And is that even a considered option?
It's really not an option given where we're at with the law that's currently in place.
Other than what?
Other than
Other than a waiver, yes,
Right,
other
right.
than what he
I understand
described.
that.
So we could do that. I mean, to your question, I think to get us to the middle of the pack, and I don't have the numbers with me, I think we would have to increase our tuition and fees probably 15-20% to hit the middle of the pack.
To get to the middle, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, because I mean, in Missouri, we deal with percentages as opposed to dollars.
Right. No, I'm
And
aware.
so,
We fought that all along.
yeah, so
Right.
so for Missouri Western, it's a great benefit because, as everybody else is increasing, the dollars are more than they are at Missouri Western. So for us, I mean, we could say, hey, let's increase the tuition by 20%. Our thinking was, because we had talked about that, our thinking was with COVID-19,
Yeah.
graphics and everything along those lines, that was probably not a good move for our students, but it would be possible.
Yeah. I'm not advocating we do it. I just
Yeah.
wanted to hear what you had to say,
Mhm.
as it relates to that, because we are, I know, down
Yeah, we
ranked,
are.
and if there was a time to get up the rank a little bit, that's all I'm
It
asking.
it is, and the state, I think, would work with us.
Because they know the situation, obviously, you're
They do.
talking with them and.
To do. So I do think, if we wanted to, we could go down that path, get fined, appeal, probably navigate through successfully. But, from our perspective, where the economy is, the demographics, our open access mission, our thought was, well, let's see what we can do with some of these actions that we have taken. And hopefully there'll be a renewed understanding from our students, the parents, everybody who is invested in Missouri Western that, hey, we're doing everything possible to deliver an affordable education that is going to be accessible. So.
Given the university that went through the waiver process and everything, and therefore was able to move it up, what'd that do their enrollment?
Exceptional question. The university, through the words of their spokesman this last year, when their enrollment dropped, said that one of the reasons why they believe their enrollment dropped was because they raised their tuition by 15%. Whether that's traceable, trackable. I mean, I'm just quoting what was reported in the news was that was what they had reported.
Do we have an option? I know historically, we haven't always taken the max increase. We haven't taken the full CPI with that. Is there any type of potential for catch-up period if you didn't use your max in previous years?
Daryl's been talking about this.
Yeah, that was a part of my other discussion is supposedly we booked a percentage last year, but according to the Department of Higher Education, they didn't get that transmittal. And so that was another one of my arguments with them yesterday about that. It would not have impacted us had we even been able to do it because the catch up is still held to the CPI unless state appropriations are cut to go along with it, and then you can backfill with it.
Yeah, as Daryl mentioned, this year our state appropriation has been cut by $1.8 million. It may be cut additionally based on some of the information that I'm hearing. I mean, we should know here in the next week or so. In the event that your state appropriation is cut, there is an opportunity under state law to recoup some of that through a tuition increase without having to go through the appeal process. But that was, as Daryl mentioned early on, that was why the slide got revised was it's a year in arrears. So right now the state is looking at fiscal year 2019 and there wasn't a cut. So next year at this time, we're talking about the cut that's happened this year in terms of, okay, could we increase it more than the CPI? One of the things that we were joking about was, well, the CPI is going to go down this year. So does this mean that we have to cut our tuition because we'll probably be at a -5 CPI as opposed to, what we're looking at this year. So I don't know how it works when you get into negative territory.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm assuming they would hold you
harmless, I would think, at zero. But next year there will be that opportunity because the funding has been cut if we wanted to go above and try and recoup some of that loss.
Okay. Yeah.
Matt, in your town hall meetings, to the point that you're having these discussions, has tuition come up in any of those discussions?
It did not.
Okay. And last year, we voted to increase tuition. It was one of the first votes that I took. Needless to say, people thought I went in here and incorrectly raised it. That's neither here nor there. But so when we compare with where we were at last year in the same thing, it seems like we're being fairly consistent here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the increase last year was no, it was about 5% because back to Dave's point, it was there was some of the catch up utilized last year.
Yes.
Sure was.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm not being critical of not raising it all those times. I mean, that's one of the things we've touted, over the years is we try to make our tuition in fees as reasonable as possible. And so we constantly had that balancing act, but I think that's a credit to the university that is always on the forefront of how do we keep our tuition as reasonable as possible with our mission and with our student body.
Absolutely. And we believe that too. And it's just like us personally, a person personally, in the sense that, you live within your means. And so that's what we have to do.
So Daryl, the proposal or the recommendation is proposal number 3. So the total would be $72.90 for 30 hours. That's still is below $1.16 below what we could, right?
Well, it's not $1.16, but yes, it's below.
Okay.
It's 26 cents.
26 cents.
And I couldn't, and without extrapolating my decimals on.
72.73. Okay.
Cents.
Okay.
Okay.
We can book that.
Trust me, I tried 5 ways.
I want that 26 cents.
To get every penny I could, but I couldn't make that one work.
We can just
Okay.
on the 26th.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And you know, if all the work that Matt had done last year down in Jeff City and talking to everybody, and if we hadn't had this COVID-19 hit and state revenues crashing, we could have, as Dave mentioned, we could have tried to increase above CPI, but obviously, as President Wilson and Daryl say, this is just absolutely not the time.
okay. Other questions on the HESFA? HESFA?
HESFA.
Yeah. Okay. The second part that we start talking about is when you're formulating tuition and fees, once you meet the state guidelines, you begin to look at operational needs across campus. And I look back through some of the former packets and things, and I did not see where this body had normally been seeing some of these, all the fees and things that we charge. And so we're trying to be inclusive and sharing these with you, because I'm used to a standard of you don't charge anything without board approval. And so that's what we're trying to move to. So here's the tuition rate proposals, and this talks about everything across the board that we currently have. We have undergraduate resident and undergraduate resident online. And I referenced this earlier. Right now, we charge two different rates for those. If it's an online class, it's $289. And if it is a face-to-face class, it's $217.72. And what we're wanting to do is make the adjustment so that they're both equal. And we'll pick up the difference. We're not going to leave money on the table, but we'll pick up the difference with the technology fee, because that's what's driving the increase. So let's put it where it should be. Okay. And so that's our thought. The other thing about Proposal 3 and lifting the caps on this really goes to the heart of what President Wilson believes, and I believe as your CFO. People need to know how to calculate their tuition and fees. And while we can't do everything that we would like to do within the guidelines of state legislation, we can get them, just as you did, Board Member Lichty, and that is get them to a per credit hour so they can calculate what it is. Okay. And so that's what we're trying to move through with the lifting of the caps and these flat fees and in all of those things. Okay. But if you'll look at that, there's undergraduate rotation, undergraduate non-resident. And as you calculate this out, it's basically just on the tuition side, about 1% just on tuition. Okay. And then as we look at mandatory fees, here we go with max experience, holding it constant, removing the caps, going to the 375, the 12, the 168, and there's the $75 instructional support and technology fee I was referring to for online classes only. The student support fee of $6, and then the yearbook fee, we would do away with that if we adopt one of Proposal 2 or 3. Okay.
Is that technology fee online, is that per credit hour?
That's per credit hour, yes. Yes.
Could you go back one slide? I mean, unless you're not done answering that
Sure.
question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Now, so we're reducing, your proposal is to reduce the online for in-state students,
Yes.
right? So they will actually see a decrease if you're an in-state student taking an online class here.
In terms
Possibly.
of tuition.
But it should come out to be slightly more because it's 220, but you see the difference between Proposal 2 and 3. The 295 is $75
Got that
difference.
built in there.
That's built in the technology fee, which is really what's driving it. And we're breaking it out. If you'll notice the 220 there, then look here, you see the 75 over in the far corner. That's the difference there. It's coming in as a technology fee, not as tuition. And that's
Same 295.
It's the same $295, but what it does is it gets our tuition schedule
Consistent.
evened up, if you will. Okay, which is what I'm more accustomed to. I'll just say that. Okay. Tuition is tuition, whether it's online or whatever. The increased cost is associated with delivery and the technology components of it and things like that. So we're just breaking it out a little differently. Okay. Other questions?
Maybe when you're all done with this, you could give us an example, like if I'm a student and.
You mean like this?
Yes, like that. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So here's what I want you to see. Okay. So we're breaking this down. We're doing it different. Okay. So under various proposals, if you look at proposal, the first half, that's a student who takes 9 credit hours per semester. They're currently paying $2,211.38. Under what is being presented today, if we go with proposal 3, they would pay $2,232.12. That's with removing all the caps and doing all of those things. Okay.
So 1% increase.
Yeah, roughly. Okay. Now then, a student that is taking 15 hours, okay, is currently paying $3,620. Theirs is going to $3,726.45. Okay.
3%.
Roughly.
Yeah.
That's right. Just under. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's a very reasonable increase for a student taking 9 hours. I mean, in this economy and these trying times.
And if we have, and actually the way it calculates out, if we have a student that, you know, if my wife decides to take 1 3-hour class, she'll actually pay less next year than what she's paying this year with the new structure. Okay. Because we removed those flat charges in there, lump sum charges. Okay.
So, you know, back to our finances. I mean, so is that a good thing? I mean, I know it makes sense.
It makes sense. But it really doesn't. I've structured it and it's just coming at it from a different angle. Okay. Right? To get the same maximum amount. No matter what I do, I can't exceed $173.16. So, the question, and this goes back to you, board member team, and that is the 2655 over there for the online class and how the difference it breaks down. It kind of gives you that. It's just structured slightly different, and there's a resident for 15 hours if they decided to do that. So, okay. Here are the program fees. I'm not sure if you're familiar with program fees. Program fees help support the individual programs of the campus. And we have several things for you on this, some modest increases. And primarily, you'll see the major increases occur in School of Business, they're in nursing, they're in high-cost programs. Okay, so that's what these programs do. We have eliminated the Law Enforcement Academy. It's a typo in the current. There's currently $11 and I think 20 cents in that, but we've eliminated that and adjusted it just directly to the fee. It was the Law Enforcement Administration, Law Academy administration fee, and we just adjusted it straight in. Okay.
Daryl, we have never seen these fees before.
Okay.
I'll just say that. So
these are all These are all things that universities are allowed to charge
Right?
and have been in place for a number of years. Dr. Davenport, in fact, has given me a history lesson on many of these, so
Yeah.
thankful or not on some of them, but nevertheless.
So if I'm in a biology student,
Yes.
I just pay $33.45 one time, or
No, it's
for every biology class, or
it's per credit. It's per credit.
per credit?
Per
Mhm.
credit.
Okay.
So, and it's not even if you're a major, it's just if you're taking a biology.
You're just taking a class.
So if you took a biology class and a fine arts class, you would be charged different rates for program fees. So one of the things that we have talked about is, could we restructure our billing system to make it more uniform so that we are just doing tuition as opposed to all of these fees? This is something that is not unique. Almost every university does this. Personally, I would like to see us get to the point where we simplify this considerably. So when somebody logs on, they can calculate their tuition themselves. It's very difficult if you're taking 6 different classes to figure out what the program fees are, what the other fees are. There's some other fees that are there. And then just one other thing while we're here, this is something that the current administration, wants to get the board not only immersed in, but to get approval for as we go forward, because there really does need to be a mechanism as we're talking about fees, putting a structure in place to have the board approve these fees. I think, we brought tuition in the past and maybe some fees, but it's good for the board to be able to see all of these, talk about these fees and approve these fees.
So accounting wise, that biology fee, where does that go? It just goes in the big pot, or does it go separate to?
Current practice, it goes into the big pot. And we have to make sure that we're funding biology.
Okay.
And to clarify.
Well, I know we're not any different than any other university. Way back when my kids were at MU, this is how they do this, and you'd get your tuition bill monthly or whatever, and you'd be like, what? Wait, what? Paper bills, and so we're not unique in this, but if we did, what Matt would like to simplify, if we did that, then our tuition would probably look like,
it would look like
$11,000 a year or $11,000 a semester or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be the same amount of money, but when you started to talk about it in terms of percentages, it would look like our cost would be going up by probably 35-40%.
Right.
So I think Dave had a question.
Yeah.
Oh, just I want a point of clarification. I think everybody knows that setting here, but these are outside the statute.
That is correct.
As far as increasing.
That is
And
correct.
that's why we can see the increases or decreases here, because
That's
this is
correct.
outside of that discussion.
They are outside.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that.
That's right. And that's a good point in the sense that program fees, course fees, and laboratory fees will all be addressing, and they'll be up on the slide. Those are all outside statute. Right.
Okay.
Yes.
We get the benefit of these slides,
Uh-huh.
right? So people keep at here. I'm going back to last year when they're asking, and they're going to ask it again this year. I'd like to make sure everybody else that these slides, like I said, here, back to your simplicity standpoint, if we could get it there, because most people don't see it or understand it.
Yeah.
I agree with all
No, that is true. And I've looked at it since I've been here with our website and how our tuition and fees are broken out and things. I'm used to, and this is just me, and I don't know if everyone's in agreement here, but I'm used to one page that lists tuition, that lists all this tuition and fees and room and board on one page. That our recruiters, our admissions team, others can hand, and that's on our website. It's out there. we can explain it. And I just think that's good communication.
That's the point I'm making. Darryl.
Yes,
It's there.
absolutely.
And somebody is telling
Yeah.
them.
And
So they can't come back and go, boy, you should have told me that. No,
you're
here
right.
it is.
And
Right
we're
here it is.
we're trying to, disclose as much as we can out there for people. But Jomel is smiling at me because she knows I'm going to come knocking after this meeting to work on that slide that from a marketing standpoint.
I would say though, from someone who is paid tuition and fees at 3 different universities for children, one of which is this one, we are not more, certainly our numbers are lower of the 3 that I would compare it to. So we are not out of bounds on that. And
Right.
part of that is they're all complex. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah,
we're
they are.
unique. That
That's right.
we don't want to say just because everyone else is confusing, it's okay if we're confusing as well. And I applaud the attempt to make this as simplistic as possible. But for anybody who is looking at any higher education things, it's a labyrinth.
It is.
Every place with that, and I think we're all aware of that. But I know current administration, you all have tried to simplify this,
Right.
and it just can't be done in one felt swoop. It's something we're still working towards, and will ultimately be accomplished. There's just only so much you can do at one time.
I agree, and I appreciate that comment. It is, it's, we've got to take steps to get to where we want to go with this longer term and simplify. And there's just, even at the end of the day, given the environment that we live in, back to some of Dave's points on things, it's just, we're just not going to be able to get there. So, okay. So this represents our program fees.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
You said that even though they're broken out for each individual class
Uh-huh.
or program,
Uh-huh.
it actually goes into a big bucket. And from the big bucket, you fund whatever you have to fund to pay for each individual one. Why can't you take one price for all of those, one average price for all of those? They're going to go into the big bucket anyway. And that would simplify, at least in my mind, what Lee was talking about.
It would. The problem is from the student perspective, and I've kind of dealt with this a little bit, from the student perspective, they know that if they're a psychology major, that they shouldn't have to pay necessarily a general fee that helps support a business major or a business.
Or the nursing program that are more expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the issue. And to say that it all goes into a big pot, it does, but we still track it by these program codes. And I will tell you that not one of these programs, has money left over. It costs more than we're able to charge realistically to operate those programs. So.
And why don't we recognize those in the fees?
We're working on it, but there's so much given, you can price yourself out of a market. I don't know where the elasticity is in some of these things, but you can price yourself out of a market. So we've made some adjustments to get them more in line, to your point, but at the same time, we're doing it, and I have a tendency to round up, as you can see, and get away from all the nickels and dimes on things.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing to add there.
Sure.
Kind of goes back to, I'll use the School of Business as an example. We have the elite accreditation in our College of Business. It's AACSB. And, that is the platinum standard for colleges of business. It's a great thing to have because it attracts students and it gives you credibility. It allows you to enter into relationships and the like. The downside for that is you need to go out and get a certain level of credentialed professor And oftentimes that's more expensive. And so, the cost that we need to pay to have a business professor that meets the AACSB credentialing is going to be, much more than what you might see in the world of theater or something like that, right? So that's kind of where your differential comes in. So as you're collecting fees, even though it's going into a pot, those extra course or those extra program fees are flowing in to support the salaries of the faculty and then the staffing in that area as well.
Okay.
Okay.
The next item are laboratory fees, and these are per individual lab. This is not per credit hour on these. Okay, so these are individual lab. These are for the supplies, the things that we have. Okay. We are removing the psychology applied learning lab fee. I think we collected a whole $120 last year on that fee. And so we're removing that. The next item deals with course fees. These are different. These program fees apply to specific programs. Course fees go to individual courses. Okay. These course fees are flat fees again, and they are,
and those
vary.
Those don't go into the general bucket, right? Those
They
are
do
designated
not
funds.
go into the general bucket. These are for specific things. Okay. And we are proposing the elimination of a couple of these things.
One of the things you can see there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Daryl, the
Yes.
computer-assisted, computer-intensive courses.
Yes.
If we had a course primarily lab, we were charging a specific fee for that. And we noticed that there were some issues that were arising from that. We should have computer labs that are open to all of our professors and all of our students and not be charging an individual separate fee so that they can do the teaching or using the computer labs.
One of the fees was, and I don't recall which one, but basically if your class was over 25, students paid so much, and if it was under, they paid so much, and we're
So
moving away from that.
This schedule is basically unchanged.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part.
For the most
this is
part,
totally
with the exception of some eliminations, it is basically unchanged because our lab fees support our labs adequately at this point in time, so we saw no reason to increase. And I conferred with Dr. Davenport.
Okay.
Here's more course fees.
More.
Okay. And you can see all the art material fees depending on what it is and things like that. So, but these again, basically unchanged. Okay. So that moves us through tuition and fees. Yes, Rick.
I'd like to back up one slide and ask
Sure.
a question.
This one?
Laboratory fees. I noticed that the physics lab fee went from $25 to $250.
That's a typo on my part, putting it into the slide. It should be 25.
Oh, good catch, Rick.
That's a good catch. Okay. Sure, the physics department's going to be disappointed in my typo, but thank you.
They thought they were going to be rolling in the dough.
Get that corrected.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. I didn't have that many toes to count on, right?
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Rick.
yes, we'll get that adjusted. Lab course. Okay. I had a note that I'd made to myself back to Board Member Lichty, your question. At the last board meeting, I don't know if you recall, but we were estimating for next year based on COVID and our downturn in enrollment and that sort of thing, somewhere around 7.1 in tuition and fees year. With your approval and an 80% decline, which is what we're projecting right now, we'll only be at 0.3 for the next fiscal year. So we made up a little ground with that. We're hopeful that we can make up more, that more students will come back and that sort of thing. I'll have a better number for you as we present the budget at the next meeting, because once we get the fees approved, I'll just share this with you. We'll run it through some various scenarios, look at retention rates. We'll do some better modeling and forecasting for the future. Okay. This brings me to the last piece as you start to formulate tuition and fees, and that is contractual obligations. And the first one here are housing fees. Okay. The housing fees have had modest increase over a period of time. You say, well, don't own our house. Yes and no. It's like me and some of my vehicles in the past, the bank and I own it together. And that's the way we are with bonding companies. We have some bonds on some of our facilities that we have contractual obligations for. So therefore, we are proposing a larger increase than normal on housing. I am proposing to the board. And there's two issues here from our housing, and we have found this out over the past year. One, that they need a lot of work. Our housing needs some work. We don't have the funds to do it. Okay, so we need maintenance money. It's just things like shower curtains that I'm just approving, and just little thing. We can't freshen up paint. We can't replace carpet. We struggle to buy new beds. It's all of those things. So we're looking at an increase there, not to mention the fact with the bond payments and some of the things that come into play with this as well. We, as you know, President Wilson, Steve Johnston, many others worked extremely hard at the legislature trying to get some money to rework Scanlon Hall. This would help us towards that effort. Will it give us what we need to do for that and what was originally proposed? Absolutely not. But we can make some changes to that. And it will help us not only in just refreshing for our current students, but it helps us recruiting. When you have a nice looking resident hall, it helps recruits.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're trying to do here. The room buyouts, we're leaving constant. One of the other changes, and we've kind of already made this in anticipation of your approval, and that is the housing deposit. What we're going to do is, instead of taking a student's money, whatever it is, when that student actually enrolls in student, we'll just turn that housing deposit and apply it to their account, instead of holding it for 4 years or whatever length of time and then refunding it back to them at some point in time in the future. So that's a little bit of a change if you're approved.
What are we looking at now? I mean, I know it's projections, but for dorms.
Well, what'd you give, 600 and?
691 returning students are coming into the residence halls right now. New students, I think we're, what, 270, somewhere in that range?
That's correct.
So, I mean, that's getting us pretty close to, 950-ish, somewhere in that range, between 900 and 1,000. And we've got 1,200 beds or thereabouts.
Right. One of the that we're dealing with is the COVID-19. Can we put 2 people to a room? That's really the big issue for us. So we'll have to see how that does. We only have so many single occupancy rooms and things like that. Josh has volunteered athletes to be the beta test on this. So.
Are you getting a lot of requests that you normally wouldn't for single base rooms?
Well, when I met with our interim director, Josh Maples, about a week ago, we had less than 20 that had kind of made requests. So it's not.
There is an option, if you look at Daryl's slide,
there is an
like
option.
Scanlon Hall, single based on availability.
Right.
You'll notice that there's a, $850, $870 upcharge.
Right.
to do single.
The-
So I think one of the things is you have some other struggling universities that to try and attract students are saying, hey, come and stay with us and we'll give you a single occupancy dorm. You know, we're in terms of housing, you know, we have more folks that are committing to us housing wise. And so as Daryl mentioned, you know, if you have more beds, you could go single occupancy, but you know, there hasn't been an overwhelming request that has been coming.
And to your point, the other part of this, for those that have requested it, they want it at the double rate, not the single rate.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
so that's the other issue. So. Okay.
That's a really low housing deposit. Only $100.
Are they using the COVID?
Yes, well, and that's there are two things on the deposit thing. You know, as Daryl alluded to, this is a change. The fact that we've been holding $100 for, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and then
5,
you know,
6.
refunding 5 or 6, you know, refunding the balances. You know, this is a change to make it more consistent. You know, most places it's higher than the $100. You know, we're trying to be sensitive as we change. There's another thing that we need to adjust is we don't require a seat deposit from students. And so we don't know how many new students are coming in until they actually show up. Unlike many other universities who, you know, charge, you know, hundreds of dollars. I have a son getting ready to go to the University of Missouri, you know, for professional school, and you know, they charge a $500 seat deposit.
Mm-hmm. So at what point could we look at doing something like that as well? Because I think Governor Tiemann mentioned the other day, you know, you put some skin in the game, you're going to have a better chance of them coming if they put a deposit down.
Yeah, and it allows us to track and to prepare and do things better. You know, I would think with this next class, the class of 2021, you know, a seat deposit would be something that would be in order.
Okay.
We can, the issue with the seat deposit deals with recruiting and things like that. You need to notify the student, of course, up front that that's going to be needed and that sort of thing. So we can always circle back, and I can add a seat deposit. I will tell you, I've got some more fees for you to look at.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'll move through them as hurriedly as I can. But
No, I mean, we need to see every single one of these, and I appreciate all the time and all the work you put into it.
I'm a broken record on the room and board because you know, it's just harder to sell that we are an affordable university when our room and board is basically the same as every other university in the state. You know, so we save money on tuition, but fill in the blank of whichever other school you go to, and that dorm and meal plan is not the same proportion. I get it that you know, food costs the same and all that stuff. I absolutely get that. But to me, it's going to be just tracking what our occupancy rate is, because leaving rooms vacant is leaving money on the table. And I know they are predominantly filled by our student athletes and by freshmen that live more than 50 miles away or whatever it is. I don't think we have very many, unless they're getting a Golden Griffin or something, that are a non-freshman, non-athlete that live in our dorm, because it's just the housing market in St. Joe is just, you just beat that so much. So.
I would not disagree with that, with the exception that I think there's a potential for a few students, I don't know how many, but there's a potential for a few students that would move back if our halls were in better shape. Not always, of course. I mean, if I can live in an apartment off campus, and you know, that sort of thing. Board fees, this is per our contract with Aramark. They requested a certain amount. It's based on CPI, those type things. You've been seeing these charges. I added the commuter plans that we offer to our commuting students. to this chart, and also our faculty staff meal plans where can be purchased. Okay. Questions?
I know you better have Rick look through it.
He's looking. He's looking. Okay. As I mentioned, questions, comments, the only comment that I'll have as I wrap this up would be that we do have a few other fees we charge on campus for parking, police fines, things like that, just miscellaneous odds and ends that I'll bring to you at the next meeting. How many fees, one board look at it one time? It was my concern.
On the meal plans, Aramark, I guess, they have to make special arrangements and whatnot for the COVID-19.
Yes, I had a conversation with them earlier this week. We've got spacing going on inside the dining hall. We also have, there will no longer be buffets. Everything will be served. They're working on ways to trim down some of the offerings so we can get people in and out quicker. We'll have more pickup options, things like that.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments? If not, would entertain a motion to approve. My job, but I'm taking over for chairperson Debbie.
Yes. So any board members have additional questions or comments?
Just to be clear, you're talking, you want us to approve number 3.
Yes.
Proposal number 3.
Proposal number 3, if everyone's agreeable, that would be the administration's preference.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the tuition and fees for 2020-21, the proposal number 3, with the one change that Governor Eversole found on the, what was it?
Physics lab.
Physics lab.
Did you have a comment?
Somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kayla. Is everybody ready for the question then? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much, Daryl.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's a lot of work. We really appreciate it.
I've got a question of curiosity for Daryl.
Oh,
Aramark,
wait, Rick, can I ask one more? Do I need to do a separate one for the room and board rates?
That was part of it.
It was all part of.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Rick.
Aramark, the food service contractor, did they negotiate with us as we had to refund money? Did we have-
Yes.
They played
yeah.
ball with us?
Yes, they did, to the
Okay,
tune
good.
of $500,000.
Good, great.
I was
Glad to
quite
hear that.
persuasive, Rick. No,
Daryl earned his salary for like 3 or 4 years on that.
no, we
Negotiations
did.
alone.
We negotiated that down from $500,000 to about $25,000 for a month operation, and then now we're even less than that. We're operating on an actual cost basis,
Well,
which
good.
this past month was about $3,000.
Good for you. Good for them.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very, very grateful.
They were easy to work with.
Very grateful.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Thank you again. President Wilson, did you want to just talk in general about some benefit ideas that you were wanting to discuss with the board?
Yeah, previously, really haven't had the opportunity to sit down with the board and talk about benefits and employee benefits. In light of the timing and some other issues, I'm going to table that. We'll just bring it back at a future board meeting. And so we can just move on to the next item agenda.
Okay. Okay, yes. So the next item, I wanted to raise the topic of board committees, and I'll have Vice President Sarah Cravens present some ideas, but I want to tell staff and faculty and anyone who's watching that the board we have asked you all to do more, and we have asked you all to make adjustments. So I want you to know that the Board of Governors is also committed to do the same. And we would like to take steps to be better informed and a little more involved without micromanaging. So this is something that we want the board to take a look at and consider board committees. Sarah?
Sure, thanks. So the board had expressed an interest in creating some committees, and this is something that that there was the possibility for already in Article 4 of the board bylaws, but the interest was in having some more specific direction and some more specific structure there. So to allow for that and to have some more specific recommendations brought back to the full board, I looked around at some examples from some other universities and came up with a proposed new Article 4 and an adjustment accordingly to Article 7 of the board's bylaws to share with you. Tom, if you can go ahead and put that up on the screen. The idea here is in light of the bylaws on amendments to bylaws, this would be just for information at this board meeting, and then you would vote on it at a later board meeting. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through this. So what you have on the screen is your current bylaw on committees and consultants. That's Article 4 at the beginning of this document. So right now it's very general. It just provides that you can create a standing executive committee, and you can create ad hoc committees, and you can appoint consultants as you like. What I have provided for here and have discussed a little bit with the chair and vice chair is the establishment of some specific committees. And the idea is that these would be small committees and that the board would be able to sort of hand off to these small groups specific issues relating to the work of the university and the work of the board. Obviously, the administration and staff and faculty of the university would continue to be charged with the main work of these areas. But to the extent that the board needs to continue the work of oversight, this would allow the main board meetings, the main every other month board meetings, to be focused on more general work and have the committees take on the focused looks at these areas and then come back to the full board and make recommendations in those areas. So the idea here is to line out what would the membership be, how would members be appointed, how often would each of these committees meet, what would the general committee charge be, what more specific charges might there be. So, so the three main standing committees that are lined out here are an academic and student engagement committee, a personnel, finance and operations committee, and then Tom, if you can scroll down, and a policy and bylaws committee. And then again, it does provide for ad hoc committees. So that's the overall picture of what's put together here. I'm going to stop there before I go into any further detail, just to see if you have questions about the overall idea of what's being put together here.
Sarah, for clarification, that these committees would not take act, they would make recommendations that would come back to the board as a whole would vote on anything that's necessary for board approval.
Exactly. Right? And they would be subject to all of the same general rules, bylaws, policies, and so on that the full board is subject to. So keeping minutes, giving notice of their meetings, they would be subject to the same sunshine laws, all those kinds of things. All of that applies to a committee in the same way that applies to the full board. other general questions along those lines?
Actually, I'll throw out a little more that since I'm one that kind of tasked you a bit of just looking into this to provide information to us. And just from my kind of evolution on the process that initially was looking at whether we should have the Board of Governor meetings more frequently than we do. We meet every other month during the school year, and statutorily we can meet more frequently than that. That's kind of there's a minimum that you have to meet, but we could increase. And there's a historical precedence of this board even meeting monthly at a point in time in the past. And then, there were decisions made to change that. And so this kind of evolved into, rather than bringing the full board together for that, whether we could actually maybe get our sleeves rolled up just a little bit more and get in defined topics drilled down a little further, and then those committee members could give the report to the board and be our eyes and ears with staff members who is, you see that there are staff members
Tom, can you scroll back up to the top?
On each committee. It isn't just a couple of us. So that's kind of the 10,000 foot view of that. Sarah's done a lot of the work with it, but that was kind of the task of what are some options out there that can make us, maybe more responsive to some of the things the public is asking of us. And I believe there is still a lot of trust and support out there, but I think it's also good practice for us to keep trying to go above and beyond of how can we even increase that trust out there with our stakeholders and the public in general. So that's just say kind of a broad-based view of why Sarah's putting this together, but the board's going to have to decide what to do. These are just some options that if the board so to chooses, we can do in the future.
So
Right.
Go ahead.
Well,
So let's hear from the others. So Lee and I have talked, and I mean, we both agree that this would be a good route to take, but if I could hear from the other board members, and of course, you have time to think about it. We'll be looking at voting on changing the bylaws in June if everybody is in agreement with this. Kayla, what do you think?
I would be glad to get more involved. I feel like that we need to know more of what's going on, and we could do that by being involved in it and being a part of it. So I'm for it.
Al?
when I first got on this board, I was totally surprised there were no committees. And in every board that I've ever been on, effectively, all the agenda items, there's committee report, the very people on it that got into the weeds, for lack of a better word. So, and I've had an opportunity to discuss some of the people here. I think it's essential we do this. I don't think there's a question about it. So.
Governor Lichty?
It's going to be my support, 100%.
Okay. And Governor Ebersole?
I agree.
Okay, so thank you, Sarah. So does that option look good to everyone, the various committees? And according to the bylaws, it allows us also to add additional committees as needed. Is that correct, Sarah?
It is.
Okay.
The one clarification I would make is that, Tom, can you scroll down until we get to the last bit right there? So if you look at Article 7 of the current bylaws on amendment of bylaws, so in order to amend the bylaws, and obviously you have to have a 2/3 affirmative vote, but written notice has to be given to each of you 30 days in advance. We only have 29 days from now until your June meeting. So unless we are going to construe the two words board committees on your agenda as your written notice, you all haven't had time to read through all of this and so on. And it may be that you have questions or comments when you actually have time to read through the text. What I would recommend to you is actually that you read through everything. You let me know if you have questions or comments in the text. And you would be able to, if we need to make any changes, we could do that at the June meeting.
Okay.
make the actual vote on the amendment to the bylaws at the August meeting, that gives you all the time also before the August meeting to work on populating those committees, deciding who's going to be on what committee, and deciding what the specific charges are. That way, when you actually vote on them at the August meeting, you can immediately have them populated and get them going. Instead of, you know, if you want to, I mean, if you want to vote on them at the June meeting, that's entirely up to you and your, and W as chair. If you do construe the 2 words board committees on your agenda as appropriate written notice, that's,
my thought is that we should wait and abide by the 30-day written notice. So I think we need to wait as per your suggestion. And by then you'll have a new board chair and a new vice chair. So I think that would work well.
I'll have that comment too.
Well, first of all, if we can vote now, why don't we do it?
You can't actually vote now.
Okay. Oh, I'm not talking about, but here, I want to go back to something that Governor,
You could vote in June.
okay, that's what I want to make clear. But I want to go back to something that Governor Teeman said. You know, with all that we've got going to monthly meetings right now, I think is essential to me. Because we're going through so much stuff in here. That's just, I don't know if that was a motion you made, but I certainly like your thoughts. I'll put it that way.
One of the possibilities, as we've talked about this, is you keep the board meeting schedule as currently constituted, but your committees meet on the months when there isn't the board meeting. So what happens is as you're coming into the board meeting, you could go to a consent agenda if you wanted to try and streamline things. That's just another option. I mean, you could do board meetings every month, but with the committee structure, if you've got 3 or 4 committees, you know, you're really doubling down on participation. It gives you the opportunity to really get even more information, and you just schedule it. Committees are every other month, and then the regular board meetings are every other month. That's just another strategy.
Well, to a large degree, we're accomplishing what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
So you're meeting every month.
I mean, in that regard.
And I know everyone will read that, but digest it. The way it's currently set up is 3 board members on each of these committees. So it means that several members are going to have to be on more than one.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't, as you look through them, or you can ask Sarah, you know, the questions either now or as they pop up of what, you know, it looks like the commitment will be, because one is going to be more than one is clearly the most, one is clearly the least, the others maybe a little debatable.
So the first 2 committees each have at least 3 voting board members on them. The last one has only at least two voting board members on them. The first and the third have to meet at least 2 times per year. And the middle one has to meet at least 4 times per year. So what it boils down to is, depending on what your board chair decides to do about whether the board chair appoints him or herself to a committee, the board chair is ex officio on all committees.
All committees.
And so if your board chair decides to appoint him or herself to a committee officially, if you have all 7 voting board members appointed to committees, you have 4 people who would necessarily have at least 4 committee meetings per year, and 2 who would have at least, 3 who would have at least 2 per year.
Right. And they're also, I mean, it's not under that, but we do have a board representative on the foundation board, which
Exactly.
we have
And the incubator
that are additional, you know, meetings. So there's a lot of commitments out there, and I'm not trying to shirk any of them, but just so as we're factoring those in of how we populate these committees, that 2 members already go to additional board meetings besides this one, as this board's representative on those other boards.
Correct.
So I guess then the question is really whether the board as a whole wants to go forward with a June vote so that I can make sure that we know that we need to put that on the agenda. So if
I
you're
would
happy
believe,
with
I would
that as
believe we
notice-
have the ability to waive notice if we want to waive notice. I would also think that probably needs to be unanimous if we're doing that. So if anyone feels uncomfortable by anything going, that they certainly have the ability to kick that down the road, and that is completely their, parliamentary right to do that. I guess the question would be is if we start amending what you've got
Exactly.
there and start changing 2 members to 3 members or
Because-
meetings more often or less often.
Because it does have to be discussed at least one meeting before.
I've expressed my feelings about that.
To email you each a copy of this tonight so that you can review it, and that, again, you can waive, you can waive the requirement as a whole if you're unanimous in that.
So we could vote in June on this, assuming that we would call the fact that our board packets were sent to us last week, which would be considered notice of board committees.
Or as Lee suggested, simply unanimously waive notice.
I think we ought to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be for us voting in June if we don't make changes to this. If through just deliberation that someone comes up with something that says, I think substantively we need to change A, B, or C, then it's discussed in June and we vote at the next meeting. But if we don't change anything substantively, I would recommend that we put it up for waiving notice. And if it's unanimous, we waive it. If it's not unanimous, then we put it on the following meeting.
Okay, let's put it on the agenda for June. That way, the new board chair and new vice chair will be ready to populate those committees as of July 1.
I'll move that we waive the notice.
Second.
Thank you, Dave and Al. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much, Sarah. Do we have other business? President Wilson?
Yeah, I have one matter. Let me see if I can share my screen here.
Okay.
Let's see. Get there. Oh, here we go. All right. Up on the screen, we have just an organizational chart as building off of our last meeting, as we talked about the reduction size of my senior cabinet, some shuffling within administration, staffing alignments. I just wanted to present this to the board in terms of what the organizational structure looks like. And so I have the overall university structure on the first slide, and then on the second slide, I have what academic affairs would look like. As you can see, we have external and governmental relations coming directly under me. Steve Johnston has done a wonderful job serving the university, and his last day with us is Friday officially. So Steve, thank you for your contributions, and it has been an honor and a privilege to work with Steve. Also, I have foundation advancement and alumni reporting directly into me. And then you can see we talk about everyone taking on additional duties across the board. So you have Daryl, VP of Finance and Administration, and he has picked up a number of things, including university housing. Our provost, Dr. Doug Davenport, we now have student affairs reporting in directly to his office. That's a considerable amount of work, and we're grateful for Hannah picking up the oversight of many things, the Associate VP for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. Dr. Looney also has picked up recreational services. And so that will be reporting to him, and he'll be overseeing that. And as you can see, Sarah Cravens, our vice president of legal, strategic initiatives, and chief of staff, is over not only strategic initiatives, but she has admissions, financial aid, the global center reporting to her. And as the board approved previously, she essentially is our general counsel. And so she has Title IX and accessibility under her as well. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments about that, but I did want to share that with the board. Okay.
I don't have any questions. I just do have a comment. And, you know, just as I mentioned at the start of our meeting, you know, thank you to our staff and our faculty for doing more. You know, just to point out that each one of you is doing so much more than you ever signed up for. And we're very appreciative for just everything that you do, and your positive attitude and your work ethic. And that's all I want to say.
Thanks. And we certainly appreciate, you know, our staff more than they know. I know that this is a difficult for them. And it's something where, you know, we have needed to make staffing adjustments since October. You can see Jomel Nichols, our chief communication officer, you know, up there. You know, she stepped up in October when we had to do our first reorganization, and she took on additional duties, and we appreciate that. And we understand, you know, particularly with the COVID-19 issues, you know, that's been difficult as we have had to do furloughs and layoffs, as we talked about. And you know, that's been very disconcerting for our staff. So we apologize to them, but at the same time, we appreciate, you know, what they have been doing as we make our way through this. You'll see here's the academic affairs org chart. Doug, do you want to talk through this just a little bit?
Sure. This new version of the organization chart, which we would expect to go into effect July 1st, the new fiscal year, reflects the restructuring first and foremost of student affairs as a direct report to me. So that is out to the right-hand side of this new chart. Below that, however, you will notice the restructure of our academic units that we have been discussing for some time. This board has been informed about that. However, there were some changes that were necessitated because of our consolidation of units and changing of reduction of programs, and of course loss of personnel. So in order to do that, we went back and revisited the original, what was the 3-college model, you may recall. And so we looked at then the department structure related to that 3-college model. And so ultimately we are going to reduce the number of departments as well. And that has been under discussion. I appreciate the work of our deans and our department chairs who have been involved in these conversations. And so that is reflected in the structure, particularly with the College of Business and Professional Studies, and then the College of Liberal Arts, which previously we had a different title for it, but based on the reconfiguration, we felt like this title was more reflective of its content. And then the College of Science and Health as well. So those are the primary changes that would be effective there from what was previously noted. So.
All right.
Thank you. Any questions? Is that all, President Wilson?
Yes, that's all that I have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any board member comments or questions before we would have to move into a closed session? No? So the next scheduled board meeting will be a regular scheduled meeting on Thursday, June 25th at 1:30 p.m. with a finance committee meeting prior to the board meeting at noon. as usual. The next meeting is when we'll be looking at next year's budget and also be receiving a report from the nominating committee. Governor Ebersold and Governor Schoonover. They'll be presenting the board with their nominations of the new chair and vice chair.
Debbie, I think you got the wrong person there. Isn't that Governor Landis? And
Oh, Governor Landis, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at your bright yellow shirt. I can't see Al on the screen. Thank you, Rick. You're always catching. So now I would need a motion to close the meeting. A vote will be held to close the meeting pursuant to Missouri Statute 610.021, Sections 2, 3, and 14, to consider real estate, personnel, and other matters protected by law. So I can have a motion to close that meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Who made the second?
Rick.
Oh. Okay. Thank you. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? So we will move to close